Hey, Jayhawk fans, it is game day, KU versus Illinois. JB and Keegan here with you on the KC Sports Authority podcast. We're going to do a quick preview and breakdown of this matchup, talk a little bit about how the game's going to go, give our predictions, obviously talk about if Jason or Jalon's going to be behind center and whichever one is there, how that's going to go. Again, this game is tonight at 6:30 p.m. in the booth. This is the blackout game. If you have not seen the new jerseys, here's a quick look at them. I know we talked about this the other day. This is the blackout the booth game. So we're excited about that. Let's go ahead and get into it. JB, man, how you doing? We're coming off a monster college football weekend to start off the year. A lot of crazy games. I already talked about this in a couple other episodes this week, some of the big time matchups. But KU starts off the season 1-0, heading into game 2 with a big time matchup against Illinois. How are you feeling so far this week after a 1-0 start?
It's overall positive. I'll give you that. I think we performed well. It was the kind of game where, of course we had a slow start. Uh, I don't think we're too good at just going out there and just hammering it home from the very get-go. That we've always been, it seems like, at least in the last year or so, always been this team that just has way better luck in the second half. But we performed well, and it was interesting amongst all the other games in college football throughout the weekend just to see some of the upsets. I mean, we were all watching the Colorado and TCU game. Fantastic, fantastic weekend. From Big 12 perspective, I think we've seen a lot of interesting games, some vulnerability from a team like Baylor, which we knew wasn't going to be toward the top, but did we expect them to lose to Texas State?
I did not.
No, definitely not. Oklahoma, I will say, scared me a little bit. I mean, we all know Oklahoma's good, but just to absolutely dominate and score 70 plus and shut out your opponent, it makes me a little scared. There's a faction of KU fans that are convinced this is the year that we finally beat Oklahoma and send them packing out of the Big 12 with a fat loss from Kansas. Will that happen? I don't know. I mean, we certainly have time to think that over. But yeah, overall, looking forward to it. I think we had a great showing in week 1, and week 2 is going to be a dogfight for sure.
Yeah, in order to put up a fight against a team like Oklahoma and be successful, we have to take on a team like Illinois. So let's talk about this breakdown here. Illinois, Power Five conference, of course. Couple good storylines here. Illinois is a program that's not too far off from what Kansas has been. They've struggled over the last several years. Interesting program there in the Big Ten. Another storyline that's kind of intriguing here is actually Coach Belima, or however you want to say his name. I always say is wrong. Brett Belima of Illinois. Him and Lance Leipold were actually both up for the Illinois job several years back, and Belima got it. And of course, he's still there now. So you got an interesting storyline there. Lance Leipold turning around this program. He's hoping to turn around that program. This is an Illinois team that had the number 1 ranked defense in the entire country last year. Now, while they did lose a couple guys to the NFL, they are returning a good bulk of that team, including their top pass rusher, which I'm totally going to get his name wrong. His actual name is Johnny, but we're sorry. I'd say Jersh. Man, I just had it here. Oh man, I'm going blank. Where'd it go? Jerzon? Man, it just disappeared on me. I apologize, guys. Anyway, they've got a top pass rusher. Very good. Jerzon Newton. I'm sorry. There we go. Jerzon Newton also goes by Johnny Newton. He was wreaking havoc in backfields last year. Decided to come back. So big time player there. Offensively, though, they did lose their starting quarterback and a couple other top pieces. They have an incoming transfer quarterback from Ole Miss. First start didn't look great last week in Luke Altmaier, but is looking to build upon that and kind of now he's knocked some of that rust off transferring over. Maybe he's ready to go. So got a big time matchup. KU right now is currently favored by 3 points. That has gone back and forth all week from anywhere from 3 to 4.5. Obviously, a lot of this is going to be dependent upon the status of Jalon Daniels, which of course we'll get into. But KU opens up as a 3-point favorite currently at home, which basically for you guys that bet and don't bet, it's telling you that the betting environment's giving KU the slight edge because it's a home game. Usually, when it's that 3-point, the slight edge goes to the home team. They are a team that pretty much lines up on paper. Illinois' offense isn't great. KU's defense isn't great. But KU's offense is great and Illinois' defense is great. So it's kind of going to be a nice matchup. It'll be a good test for us to see how legit this offense is. That defensive line is really solid. So this will be a great test for the offensive line as well to see how they hold up. But a couple storylines going to the game, of course, from an injury standpoint, is the status of Jalon Daniels, as well as a guy like Luke Grimm. I didn't even catch this that much during the game. Luke Grimm went out after that touchdown catch with, I believe, a leg injury. He is questionable to play. But we've got good depth of receivers, so that helps. But obviously, the biggest question here is the status of Jalon Daniels. Is it going to be Jalon? Is it going to be Jason behind center? As of now, we're told Jalon is going to play, but that's what we were told last week, and he did not play. So going into this matchup, what is your confidence factor? A, that Jalon plays, and 2, what is your confidence factor if he doesn't? So your confidence in Jason Bean.
Man, I'm at like a 20% chance that it's going to be Jalon Daniels starting at quarterback for Kansas. I'm not there yet. And I think that's okay. I don't think that's something that fans need to be really worried about. We talked about it in the last episode. Jason Bean is more than a serviceable backup quarterback because he is starter level talent. So we've been there, talked about that. So I'm not so worried. I mean, when you look at the quarterback battle, just head to head, we have the better quarterback if we're running with Jason Bean. We do. Yeah. Now, Altmaier had I think it was 210
Yeah, it
passing
wasn't a
yards.
huge game. Honestly, Illinois barely
Yeah.
made it out of that game. Without a last-second field goal, we'd be sitting here talking about an 0-1 Illinois team. So honestly, I don't know how impressive they were
Yeah.
week 1, but they're here 1-0.
The Illini fan base seems to think that Luke Altmaier did pretty well, and I was watching some of their content before recording, and just kind of shocked to hear their optimism because to me the struggles were apparent, and it just didn't seem to translate all the time on the field. Where I mean, there were some inconsistencies and an awful pick thrown too. But you know what? I should shut my mouth because we play that way sometimes too. So I'm not trying to get too optimistic, but I think overall, quarterback to quarterback, we have the better matchup. So that's fine. You alluded to it earlier. It's KU's offense versus Illinois' defense. It's going to be the battle between the two. Whichever one is more solid is going to be what wins the game. And it's tough because, defense wins championships. Illinois is a great defensive team, but you know what? They showed struggles against Toledo.
They
I like
really
to think
did.
that,
It was
yeah,
not their best act. Now, again, week 1, so I was talking with another friend on the last episode I was doing. I don't always take the defense to heart week 1. I think a lot of teams come out slower. And college football is such a dynamic offensive game now that I don't put a lot of trust in what the numbers say week 1 from a defense because I think it takes a little bit of time to get going. But yeah, Toledo actually did pretty decent. I mean, they didn't have a ton of yardage, but they still ran for 186 yards on 42 carries. So they ran the ball a lot. They spread it out amongst, their quarterback ran for 20 carries. So a little bit similarity to how we could function. I don't think Jason Bean or Jalon's running 20 times for that matter. But that shows you that even though Illinois got a good defense, you can still run the ball on them. So if you can get 180 plus yards, you've got a fighter's chance. But on the flip side, Illinois, same thing. They ran the ball pretty effectively as well. Lesser team, but they still ran the ball for 35 times for 168 yards. But they had 3 different guys with at least 9 carries, including their quarterback. So it's going to be an interesting look. I think KU defensively is a little bit better matchup this go around. I think they've got some better athletes on all 3 levels to combat a running quarterback. But Illinois also has to then handle our running quarterback, whether it's Jason or Jalon. And if we can do anything similar to what Toledo did, especially here at home, it makes me feel pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, it's very much a toss-up game when all is said and done. But yeah, it's going to come down to, can our offensive line be bigger, more physical, more dominant against their defensive line, open up those seams for guys like Devin Neal, Daniel Highshaw to have a tremendous game, and that's absolutely in the cards. So we have that to look forward to. KU is very versatile in their offense. That's what makes our offense very good, is we can run the ball straight through the field and get touchdowns, but we can throw it too. And I'm looking at this game like, well, this might be our opportunity to showcase a little bit more what we can do in the throwing and the passing game that we didn't get to show off as much in week one. Because in week one, it seemed like, okay, we're just going to run the ball a
Yeah.
lot. And they finally unleashed Jason Bean at some point. We saw some pretty nice throws kind of late in that game. I think we expand on that going against Illinois, because while we can expand on that, and we on the opposite end, we can expose them. I think we have a pretty good secondary, and we can defend both the run and the pass. So I'm looking forward to that matchup. It's going to be a pick 'em in some aspects, but man, you got to give the edge to the home team. And it's not me being biased, but I there's a reason why KU is favored at least by a few points. So looking forward to that matchup for sure.
Yeah, and I think that favoritism is going to be solid because we're still going to have a really good turnout from the fan base. This is a big time game. Game one, week one is a big time home game, and it was great turnout last week. But this is another big matchup that KU needs to have, and it's one they need to win. So as we get back in that Jalon or Jason conversation, um, there hasn't been a whole lot of talk this week other than, hey, if Jalon can't play, we're confident in Bean's capabilities, but all eyes are looking to Jalon running out of the tunnel and being there for game day. Um, Obviously, KU's chances are much better with Jalon. And I think anybody can sit here and say that. It doesn't take a genius to figure that one out. Again, his skill set is just a little bit better, and there's more things he can do in the playbook
Absolutely.
that Jason can't do. I think we saw that last week with a couple throws that Jason underthrew that Jalon probably has a little bit better arm for. But if it is Jason, honestly, my opinion is I think we're going to see both. I think you're going to see both quarterbacks play, depending on how Jalon's feeling. I wouldn't be shocked if Jason starts it again and then Jalon works in the second or third drive. If Jalon's looking all right and builds some momentum and consistency, then I think you see in the rest of the game. But I would not be shocked if we see if we see Jason early, or if we see them go to him periodically, depending on how Jalon's feeling. But if you do get Jalon back there, then yeah, that just opens up the playbook. Because as we saw against this Toledo team, if you can get the quarterback in space and run, you're going to get some yardage. And if you can get yardage, you're going to get down the field and at least give yourself opportunities to score. And against an Illinois team who's supposed to have a stout defense, you need every opportunity you can get on the opponent's side of the field to go score points. And even if you get in a back and forth game, if you can secure those field positions to at least get some field goals here and there, um, every point's going to help. But yeah, I personally have the Hawks winning this one. I have them covering the spread at 3. I think now, if you're a betting person, now's a good time to get the 3, because if Jalon is for sure announced as a starter, I wouldn't be shocked if we see another half point added onto that, if not a full point, because he just brings so much more dynamic to the game. The next point I was going to talk about in this game, as far as keys to a victory, and you kind of touched on it earlier, it's going to be the battle of the trenches. Can our offensive line hold up against their defensive line and push forward? Because if we can get out and run the ball with Neal and Highshaw and McDuffie and the rest of the crew, if we can spread the ball out offensively with those running backs and control the ground game, that always opens up things offensively for the passing game. And this is a KU team who, even though we have decent weapons and we can throw the ball downfield, our strength is running the football. And Devin Neal had a solid outing last week. Highshaw did okay. Sevion had a good solid run. If we can get back into space and keep those guys pushing forward and moving the chains, I think KU can control the tempo, control the clock, extend their possessions, and really control the offensive game from the start. Now, one thing you did mention earlier that I think is an important key Last week we struggled to start the game.
Yeah.
We scored the touchdown early, but we didn't really build a lot of momentum early. I think this is a game that KU does need to have a little bit more energy to start. I think you need to have that first drive defensively be a 3-and-out and then score immediately. If we can
Yes.
set that tone early and get out and score, because the last thing I think I want to see is Illinois go up like 10-0 or, 13-6 or something, and then we're having to inch our way back in, because if their defense is playing out front and ahead from the start of the game, we're going to have an
Yeah.
uphill battle. So we got to
You know,
start early. We got to get the ball running.
Keegan, I got a secret to tell you, man. If that happens, if we go down 10-0, we go 14-0, if we're down by 2 scores, we're not winning that game if we have Jason Bean throughout the entire game as our quarterback. I'm sorry. I really I I see the potential, but when I think back to last season, those comeback games that we had, they were fueled by Jalon Daniels. And if there's one quarterback I trust to get us out of the 14-point deficit, it's Jalon Daniels. I gotta
Yeah.
see him on the field. Now, if there's a situation where starts the game and puts us in a hole, maybe that's when we bring Jalon out, and the fan base would go wild. We would
Yeah.
not let. I could you imagine the atmosphere in Kansas Kansas's stadium, just if that were to happen, because all of a sudden it would light a huge fire. Um, I would be interested to see that. Of course, I'm never rooting for a deficit like that. I think we've seen enough of those last season. So going forward, I'm looking forward to hopefully just dominating from the get go and controlling the game.
Yeah. Last thing I was going to add in here, and again, we're going to keep this one short because it's already game day and we don't want to have you guys sitting here all day listening to us talk. But the last thing I want to add in about some key matchups, I think this is a game where, as we open up the playbook, I think you'll see the tight ends get involved a lot more, especially if Luke Grimm either is out or limited. I think you're going to see that combination of Jared Casey, Mason Fairchild through the middle as that kind of security blanket to open things up. So if we're not getting open downfield and that pass rush is getting there to the backfield quick, I would not be shocked if this is a game you see Jared Casey, who didn't have a catch last week, gets 5 to 7 catches because he's eating up the middle yardage there, as a security blanket, or we're throwing it up to Fairchild to go and get. So I think that's a big matchup to look out for as well, on top of the running game. But any other thoughts you have, or key pivotal important moments here in this game that are going to lead to a Jayhawk victory?
I think it's going to be the last thing really is going to be protecting the ball. I don't foresee this game being one similar to week one where we didn't punt a single time. I think if we're remaining patient in those times where we just kind of struggle to get up the field, but that's going to be key. But also, let's protect the ball. It just if we limit turnovers and just make sure that we're not making any mistakes, any costly mistakes that cost us yardage with flags thrown left and right, that's how we can maintain our poise as we, proceed to hopefully come to a nice victory over Illinois.
Yep. Good fundamental discipline football. That's how you got to play. How about your final score prediction?
I was going back and forth. I know it's going to be tight. I'm thinking I'm struggling because I'm trying to think, do we eclipse 30 points in a game like this? I think I want to say we do. I'm going to be conservative and I'm going to say 28-24 on this one.
Okay, that's almost what I have. I have it at 27-24. I think um, three touchdowns and a couple field goals get it done, because I don't trust Illinois' offense to do enough, even though they did score 30 last week. But I think KU's defense is much improved, and I think we have the athletes on the outside to contain some of that run game. So if we can slow down the run and control the game early on, then I think KU wins this out. So yeah, that's our prediction for this week. Again, as a reminder, I'm going to throw it back up here. This is the blackout game.
Wear
The
black.
sweet new uniforms. If you haven't noticed it yet, they're giving out a black towel to the first several thousand students that show up. The ask is that everybody who can wear some sort of black KU gear. You can obviously go online and buy some of the shirts and jerseys already, but pretty sweet. love the black uniform, love that circus font as we talked about in the last episode. Really love that game day flag. This will be a new look. It'll be intriguing to see, but I think it's also going to get a lot of people super fired up day of. So looking forward to that. Black out the booth again, 6:30 tonight. Everybody show up, get in there. If you can't make it to the game, you better be watching or you better be tailgating outside the game because we need everybody's excitement there. And everyone just keep crossing those fingers and hoping that Jalon plays. But yeah, that's going to do it for this one, guys. We will for sure do a recap afterwards. Probably get it back out to you after the weekend's over to kind of recap how this game went. And hopefully we're sitting here again next week talking about a Jayhawk victory. So until then, guys, hopefully we're 2-0. Rock chalk.
Rock chalk.